Namaste. Good evening to everybody. A very warm welcome to all our participants and our esteemed speakers of this evening, Rachel and David. Welcome. We had an incredible session last Saturday from a world-renowned family business advisor, Dennis Jaffe, where he shared with us the learnings from 100-year family businesses as to what all the key learnings they have. It was a wonderful session. Since then, we have been receiving lots of emails and questions have been pouring. It's very, very interesting. You know, we are very, very happy and fortunate. And we feel that the purpose for which we started the Parampara Family Business Institute of sharing the learning with everybody has come to a fruition. And today I am very privileged to moderate yet another cutting edge topic on family business, a very special subject which has hardly spoken about in the world. And the topic is, as all of you are aware, reputation. How do we manage our reputation? And for all of us, reputation is a very invisible topic, and we must understand how we are going to handle the reputation as a subject from experts like you. Before that, I would now request our chairman, Parampara Family Business Chairman and GMR Group Chairman, Shri GM Rao ji, to share his welcome note. Over for 2 decades, Shri GM Rao ji has been an inspiration to me for his futuristic thinking in the field of family business. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much and welcome. Hello, everyone. I welcome you to the second session of our learning journey on family businesses. We made a great start with the success of the first session with the participation from 15 countries. 94% of the participants rated the session as good to outstanding. It pleases me to know that a thought few years back has manifested into this global learning platform of Parampara Family Business Institute. A not-for-profit initiative of GMR Foundation, which began with the sole object of serving as an education and research platform on family governance, is today spearheading the knowledge on various aspects of family governance to the people across the globe. Honestly, it humbles me to the core. In the first session, Dennis Jeff, an expert with 40 years experience in family enterprise, shared insights on the wisdom of 100 years old family enterprises, as how a truly generative family business smartly manage longevity through intergenerational transitions. It is very insightful to learn that generative families do 4 things. They have a successful portfolio of businesses. They adapt and innovate constantly. They have a strong shared culture and identity. No one person can be identified for its success, shared contribution from all. I'm sure we all are greatly enriched by the wisdom of Jeffy. Today, we have another very interesting topic, reputation. You can't manage what you don't know. We have 2 experts among us, Rachel Atkins and David Imison. We will learn the criticality of the reputation. We will learn the criticality of reputation management for prominent individuals and businesses, which is highly underrated. Impact of the reputation as the effect of killing off investment opportunities, banking facilities, commercial partnership, and many other significant businesses and personal challenges. It is imperative to have sound process and policies to manage the reputation of businesses, families, and its individuals. We shall learn the what, why, and how of reputation from experts present today. I hope that Parampara Family Business Institute with the online symposium and the curated sessions by globally renowned experts on the subject will benefit established and upcoming family businesses, especially small and medium family businesses, as they are most vulnerable in the absence of proper awareness. This initiative of Parampara will ensure accessibility of a unique opportunity by various incumbent and aspiring family ventures to interact with the global experts of this domain. I'm sure all of you will enjoy the learning session today. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please kindly go ahead, Atkins and David.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Very inspirational thoughts. I would like to share with all our audience that we have about 1,050 registrations and people are logging in. We have participants coming from 11 different countries. Many large, medium and small family businesses have been participating. As Shri G.M. Raoji mentioned, this topic is equally applicable to all the family businesses, whether they are a small size or whether they are a big size. I now take the pleasure of introducing the speakers of the day, Ms. Rachel Atkins and Mr. David Imison. Ladies and gentlemen, I feel very fortunate to have amongst us two very reputed practitioners, professionals from UK. Rachel is a lawyer and a partner at Schillings. She specializes in protecting individuals, their families and businesses from attacks on their reputation and privacy. David is a partner at Schillings. He leads the firm's advisory services, including intelligence, investigations, and media strategy work. His background is in risk advisory, and much of his work is in the areas of dispute. When we talk about the concept of reputation, I feel it is relevant to mention at this stage that there are different types of family business capitals, such as financial capital, intellectual capital, spiritual capital, human capital, and social capital. And the most important one which we are going to speak today is a reputation capital, which is highly invisible in nature, but has the most profound impact. The reputation takes generations to build, but it can be lost in a jiffy like this. One cannot do any specific action to build it overnight, but it takes a long period of time to build the reputation for the family businesses over generation, and only through right actions this can be built. So one has to have their head in the right place to ensure that they are going to build the reputation very, very carefully. I am highly excited to have the conversation on this topic with two eminent speakers on this subject and professionals and practitioners. I hope all the audience, you have your paper and pen ready with you to make some notes. And if you have any questions, you can post it on the Q&A section in the Zoom, and we will try to pick up as many questions as possible to get the best knowledge out of all of you. Rachel and David, both of you have been specializing in dealing with reputational risks, and you have done huge piece of work in this area. Could you please share your thoughts on when do you actually clients call you? Under what circumstances they reach out to you?
Well, that's a fascinating question to open with, Mr. Dixit. And thank you for the kind introduction. Rachel and I are both extremely glad and honoured to be with you today. Thank you to the Parampara Family Business Institute and the GMR Foundation. So we couldn't be more excited about discussing the topic of reputation today. The first question is a really important one, and I think it would be fair to say, and I'm sure Rachel will jump in here as well, I would say on about 20% of the times that a client calls us, it's because they've had an opportunity to sit down and think about their reputation capital, the reputation capital of the family and the business, they've made a specific decision to put in place a proactive plan to manage or protect or enhance that reputation capital. So what would an example of that be? So taking a couple of recent examples of family business questions that have been posed to both Rachel and myself. The first one is an example of a family business which is founded by a Russian family, and this is an extremely successful business that sell very high-end into sort of the ultra high-end luxury goods market. And their question was really interesting. They said, actually, in some of our markets, being Russian doesn't really help us. We'd love to have Schilling's view on what we can do to internationalize our brand where it needs to be internationalized, but also play up to its Russian heritage where that does help us in particular markets. So that's a very conscious decision to think about your reputation capital, to think about it in the context of different markets and ideas. Another example Rachel and I worked on recently was a very large family that's been going for an extremely long time. So we were dealing with their fourth and fifth generation of the family. And they had a really interesting dynamic. So they had a lot of the family members were based in Hong Kong, and a lot of the family members are now based in the United States. And really, obviously, the sort of geopolitics of that is quite interesting now. There's a lot of tension, of course, with the United States and Hong Kong and China. And the family were very conscious about media inquiries and questions coming into them about their heritage and how they see certain dynamics. So they approached us to prepare very proactive media protocols, set of media protocols for the family office, which we helped them with. But so those are forward-looking views. But Rachel, is it fair to say that 80% of the time it's still, when an issue has arisen, that we get called?
Definitely. And thank you, Dixit G. Thank you very much for having us today. It's an honour to be with you all, and thank you for inviting us. And David is completely right. However much we try to educate clients, prevention is better than the cure. At least 80% of our work still comes in when there's an issue or a crisis. So we've got a list of reasons that most clients call us, or most of our calls come through, and it's where people are facing relationship problems that are becoming public, extortion, hostile campaigns from competitors or perhaps disgruntled customers or employees. Online impersonation is one now. Smear campaigns that are becoming much harder to moderate because the internet allows a lot of people to be anonymous. But the three biggest ones, so to speak, that we're still continuously called for are threats from the media. So the media, whether that's online or print copy worldwide, are trying to publish false allegations about someone, or perhaps publish confidential information about a company they've got hold of. Competitors, threats from competitors. So that might be smear campaigns or anonymous blogs that we think might be from a competitor, effectively publishing falsehoods or non-truths about a company and the family, or just bad things. And then more and more, a lot of clients are calling us nowadays for what we've called flawed flags, but it's effectively problems with financing. So they will be with a bank for a number of years, and the bank have suddenly said, we're not going to lend you any more money because we've seen allegations out there about tax investigations or something like that. Or they're trying to get finance, more importantly, often in a different country for a particular deal. And they come to us saying, this bank or this lender won't give us money because they're concerned about reputation issues or rumors they've heard or associations they've made that are probably not true or completely out of date.
So that's extremely interesting that the three reasons what you mentioned is pretty much people have a reactive orientation. Any area where you can think of where families where you have worked with, where they have proactively thought through various possibilities that where all the risk to the reputation is, and therefore, because usually, especially in India, I can have a parallel analogy about the healthcare. You know, in India, preventive healthcare is very, very poor in my experience. If you have a health problem you are hit with, then you go in search of a
cure or treatment. But awareness is slowly building up that if you are able to invest more in the preventive healthcare, you will not have a health emergency. Similarly, in a preventive area, could you share any of your interesting experience of working with any families in terms of how they approached you or how you dealt with? It would be very interesting to hear one case on a preventive basis whom you have worked with, and one case on a reactive basis when they have reached out to you, and what you could do to help them.
Shall I go first, David? Are you happy with that? This it started off as being preventative, where we had a client who, successful family business, and knew they were going to take over or merge with another company. So they had to, instead of just going along the business steps, they had certainly thought about what are the reputation issues, what mud, for want of another word, is going to be thrown at us. So how could we prepare rebuttal packs and points to answer the allegations we knew were coming? And how could we worked with them to build resilience. So what was already out there about the client? What could we find that a journalist or a competitor would already be able to find out there? And then how could we build resilience about that? Some of the information didn't need to be online. How could you take some of it down, or perhaps take some of the private information off, or put some good information out there? So there are certainly some cases, and often it's the clients that have suffered problems in the past. They become experts. They've been burnt once. They become experts at being preventative. How can we stop this happening again?
Yes, agree. And I think there's one area in particular that increasingly I think families and individuals are more aware of and are being more proactive, and that is in the area of their sort of digital or online privacy. There's a very close connection between privacy in that environment and security. And so a lot of the work that Rachel and I do on behalf of individuals and families is proactively preparing an audit of their public profile. So there are all types of ways in which people inadvertently disclose private information about themselves that they're not really aware of. And more often than not, it's younger generations in families who are, of course, often have a different attitude towards that kind of thing. And so what we really do is we really start from the point of view of the family, saying, how private do they want to be? How does their actual profile match up to their desired state of privacy? And then what can we do to resolve the two? And so that's a really fairly straightforward exercise to go through, and clients and families want to do that increasingly.
You know, David, it's very interesting what you are talking about, the concept of private information. See, while working with, I have been working with family businesses of more than 2 decades, I come across 3 types of data they have. There's a public information, there's a public data, there's a private data, and there's a secret data. And between the 3, sometimes the awareness is very, very low amongst the family members, is which one they are trading and sharing where. And for the affluent and successful family businesses, does privacy is a choice? Do they have a choice? David, I keep hearing you say about, is it a matter of choice they have, or can I have your thoughts in this area, please?
Yes, I can try to explain what I mean. And I like your analogy. I've heard it said before that everybody has 3 lives, a public life, a private life, and a secret life. And Google is the only person that knows about all 3 of your lives. But when it comes to privacy and control, if you think about a social media platform, yes, we have control about our privacy settings. Yes, we have some control about what information we choose to disclose. You know, frankly, we don't have control over whether or not someone wants to maliciously hack into or take our information. Last year, probably one of the most famous examples of this that I can think of, you know, Jeff Bezos, then at the time, I think was the world's richest man. He was allegedly, and the Saudi Arabians deny this, hacked, again, allegedly in retaliation for his ownership of the Washington Post, and the fact that it gave a platform to the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. You know, those revelations and that hacking of Mr. Bezos's phone led to National Enquirer articles. It led ultimately to a very public issue for him and his divorce to his ex-wife. But you don't have to be the world's richest man to get targeted. And Rachel and I see this every day, and because it's not sophisticated state hackers. There are all kinds of people that are interested in a family's private information. And very often, in our experience, that is members of staff, often not for any malicious reason, but just because they're close to the family, journalists, competitors, and a whole range of people that are interested in that private data.
And how does one develop consciousness about these people who could be nosy or who have a ulterior motive or an agenda? How does family shield themselves? You know, especially in Indian context, with many families, I see when they are having a big celebration, it may be sometime with some families, it could be very ostentatious in nature. And they are putting up all sorts of their private information into the public domain. And there is no secrecy left with us because of Google. They are completely tracking us, and every single app, what you have downloaded in your mobile, they are tracking you, what exactly you are doing, where you are going, and the data is completely mined. So how does one develop some kind of a consciousness, awareness, or say, you know, these are all the clear boundaries we should have? Some thoughts will be very helpful for our audience today in this area, because there is a big reputation damage area which can bring in.
I think the word you've just hit on there is a really good one. It's all about consciousness and thinking that exactly what you've said, that most of these events nowadays are kind of being recorded somewhere, or everyone's a publisher, everyone's got a mobile phone and everyone can take photos. So in a sense, it's the consciousness and awareness. We worked with one client who did have a huge, it was a 50th, but it could be any event. It was a party, and they'd taken over a ski resort for the whole weekend. That was their party, and we worked with them and their party team to help them preserve the privacy of that event. So from things like telling the guests not to upload photos onto social media, to stopping, they've flown in A-listers to perform, to stopping those people uploading recordings of their events onto social media. To the extent we had one person there, but we also had a team of us back here in the UK monitoring for 48 hours what was on social media, so that we could phone effectively the personal assistant of the person having the party and say, you should know that, you know, Rachel Atkins, who's at the party, or whoever's there, has uploaded some events, some photos, and could you ask her please to take those down? So it was a live, ongoing, structured event that we were in communication with the organisers to try and keep it as private as possible. But that was hard work, and they really had to use what you've said, the consciousness. It was the planning beforehand, because it would have been very difficult, well, almost impossible afterwards, if all the photos were up on social media, to then go and kind of piecemeal take them down when they would have spread to magazines or other sites. So it really is, I think people nowadays need to be very aware before an event what's happening.
But it can also be seen as a positioning for a particular family or a family business to build an image online. Because when you go to your media advisors and social media specialists, they always sell the story to you as to how you can build your image using the online platform. I'm sure everything has got a good side and a bad side to it. But how do we leverage of the good side and be very, very aware and conscious of the not so good side? Any thoughts in this area would be very helpful.
This is really important, and something that, you know, Rachel, I would never say to individuals that it's always a good idea to have no profile. That's not the objective. The issue with having very little online profile, even if you want to be you know, a private family, is that it creates a vacuum. And if something negative comes up, it comes straight into the vacuum, and it becomes very hard to untangle that negative information from the individual or the family. So we would always say proactively, you do need to have a look and have an audit of your online profile. And you don't have to use it to promote yourself endlessly in a positive way. It is okay to have a neutral profile. But what is more important than positive or neutral is ownership. You know, page 1 of Google is prime real estate. And if you own your page 1 of Google to the extent that you can, then you own the prime real estate. You know, the statistics suggest that only about 5% of people ever go to page 2. So ownership is the critical part. And if you own your existing online profile, then if somebody wants to do something malicious or they want to put something negative into the public domain about you, you stand a far better chance of protecting yourself against it.
You know, while you work with individuals and family business houses, in your experience, what is the key differentiator you see between the family business reputation issues versus a non-family business houses reputation issues? Because I feel there could be vast and significant area to focus on. It would be very interesting to hear from you, because most of our audience today who are tuned in from India, they happen to be family business, and our Parampara Family Business Institute is focusing on the family business awareness and education in this area. So that would be very helpful to hear the focused family business challenges to preserve the reputation and also to build the reputation. What are the few things they should do?
Well, Rachel and I work, I would say more than half of our work is with private businesses and individuals, probably considerably more than half, but we also work with large listed you know, companies. And you're absolutely right, it's entirely different. With a family business, the reputation of the family is often really hard to separate from the reputation of the business. And so an attack on, you know, the promoters of a business becomes an attack on the business itself, and vice versa. And so not only does this require more careful management, it also means it's a lot more emotive, and criticism you know, is taken a lot more seriously in some cases. So to give you an example of a practical example of that, and one thing to be aware of, it really relates back to some of the introductory idea about having a capital and a reputation score. So as individuals, I think we're all generally aware that we have a credit score, and that's information upon which third parties make decisions about, you know, whether to give us money and how much in our personal lives. Actually, there's a whole range of databases out there, global databases that sweep up information about businessmen and businesswomen. And these databases, you know, they have commercial names, LexisNexis and Refinitiv are providers, and they have products like WorldCheck and World Compliance. These databases are the basis of decision-making for lawyers, bankers, trustees, auditors. Most of the time when we speak to family businesses, they don't know what information is being held in these databases about them individually. And that's the point, it's personal data. So there will be 5 stories that these databases have swept up about the founder, let's say. A bank is looking at that data and then using that to make a decision about whether or not to deal with the company. Now, if the founder doesn't know what their reputation score is, or they don't know if they're listed as a PEP, a politically exposed person, or whatever it might be, it's very hard for them to then manage that scenario. So again, preemptive, proactive work is try to find out what your equivalent, you know, your reputation score is. Try to interrogate these databases and find out beforehand.
Is it possible to access this an awareness about you know, what is how the public is thinking of me, or how my stakeholders are thinking of me in terms of the reputation score? How does one get to know about it?
on the area that David has just talked about, as an individual, you can make, it sounds quite boring, but you can make what's called a subject access request. So you, as an individual, can write, or we can write, whoever, someone can write on your behalf as the family member, in a sense, saying, dear compliance database, you hold personal information about me, and the laws are such at the moment now that you are entitled to know what personal information someone holds about you, and they will produce to you a copy of the current report they have collected about you. So not anyone else, and companies can't make quite the same request, but the individual, so the founder or the principal and the family members, can make that request.
Oh, that's very interesting. I'm just, as I'm listening to you, something is crossing my head. I'm sure Google is listening to us, and they're going to come up with a separate service called Find Your Reputation Score based on our analysis, unless already they have it. Look, it's very interesting. So going more into the family business domain, what else is they need to be extremely careful? One is from the financial angle, which can hurt them deeply. So they need to really plan for it. So whether they are going to raise the capital or equity, what else they should be cognizant of? How does, say for example, if I ask you about governance, see, there are certain things which is within their control, certain things which is beyond their control. So what are the few things which is within their locus of control? What can they maneuver, such as governance? Any experience you have working with any families where because of not handling it well or handling it beautifully, how it has enhancing the reputation score?
It's interesting. Everyone does it slightly differently, and obviously all families and all companies have a different scale in what they're concerned about, and that's probably changed over the years. But it's really, one client has said to me in the past, and she advises a family, she's on the communication side, and she has said to me before, I wish they would just think about reputation in their business deals. They might still do the business deal, but I can't always sort it out later. So don't come into me and say, we've bought this area, it's over, it's a piece of land that used to be very important for historical reasons, and now we're going to build on it. Please sort it out. That might be impossible, but at least build that into the purchase of that land, or the development of how you're going to do it. Are you going to maintain the historical importance? Are you going to keep a museum for certain areas? To build that into the project first as part of whether it's governance or good business practice. For some people, and I think particularly for families, it's about bringing everyone into the concern. So some people have a rule: don't put something on social media if you don't want your mum to read about it, and so that's a fairly easy rule, basic to understand. It's always going to be there. So if you say something bad about a person, or if you set up a group, we have a client here who it's a CEO of a public listed company. So it's not a family, but the family has the issue that the son of the CEO has set up a group on Facebook saying, I hate fatcats.com, which, is not helpful if you're the CEO, but it's probably an activity that a lot of children may have discussed at university. But in my day, that wouldn't have been online. People would have had their own views in a social environment, but nowadays everything stays there. So it's about educating as much as anything, the entire family, the next generation, the cousins, and everyone else, to be aligned as part of, to use your words, Dixit Ji, the governance.
So since you mentioned about the next generation, and during our time, the technology was not that much prevalent, And so there are many of our next generation family business Sayans are listening to us today, and they are very tech savvy and they have a social media presence. And what is your advice and experience would you like to share with them in terms of certain do's and don'ts? Because in some cases we have found, you know, in family meetings, there's an argument going on when we set the media policy between the senior generation and the junior generation. You know, the youngsters say that, look, this is the only way we will keep in touch with our friends, and so we are not very happy to adhere to the suggestions what you have, and it's not okay. And this is always a friction area. What is your advice to the young generation on and social media particularly?
Yeah, it's the massive gap at the moment between, as you say, those of us that grew up without everything being online and those that it's the way of pure communication. First of all, I think telling people what to do or being told what to do by a bunch of lawyers doesn't work. We can certainly say that, and it's much better to have people of similar age groups or understanding discussing and explaining the risks rather than just having a list of this is what you must not do. Some families have worked around it, exactly the point you're raising on the communication issue, and some very big families I know have set up proper technical solutions to allow people to have a platform to discuss the family business, to discuss things with their cousins, but in a safe format. So rather than it just being on something that could be got hold of from Google or whoever, they've actually physically set up something that is just a closed group to the family. But it's a balance, like most things in families. It's a compromise. It's what can everyone live with, and what are the risks of, you know, helping younger people understand that if you put something on social media or you put everything out there from your private life, everyone's going to see it forever. So if you go for a job or a business deal in the future, someone will be able to find that. And do you really want that to be there forever? So again, it's a discussion and has to form part of the longer term planning. And it probably changes over, you know, from the 60, 70-year-olds will have a very strong view that there should be nothing, down to the, as you say, 18-year-olds who will want to put everything out there.
So how does one go about coaching them? Because the younger generation is very expressive in nature. And you will see in families, some people are introvert and some people are extremely extrovert, and they have a need to exhibit and very categorically express what they are doing, what they are feeling. I know some people that every 1 hour they keep posting something in social media, and it has become not just a tool of expression, but it is also psychologically, it helps them to value themselves better. When they see many likes coming in like this, it gives them a very good feeling about themselves. Oh, I'm really liked. So it enhances their self-worth as well. And the social media has captured the hearts and minds of people in such a way that it is playing with their self-worth. So have you interacted with any young generation in families? How do you go about it? Give us some practical examples. Yes, we have to meet somewhere in halfway, but something more where they have a better understanding.
So I'll give one example. Oh, sorry, David, do you want to go? Or?
You go and I'll jump in.
Okay, fine. What we've done with some people is had some technical savvy people from our office go in a jeans and a t-shirt to chat to people over, you know, a cup of tea or something, a social environment, and go through with them. First of all, only 3 simple steps, so not a whole long list, just these are 3 steps that could help protect your privacy. But also what really works is going through with people some things that could either go wrong that we've seen in the past, or it can work quite effectively to show younger people what we would be able to find out. And David can talk about his team a bit more in detail on that, but what we might be able to find out about the person we're going to see. So to show them really you're putting all this stuff up there, but it does mean a journalist or a more hostile character could find all this personal information about you and make them realize the risks. Sorry, David, you were...
No, agree, exactly. It's a really tricky balance, and we don't want to, it's not our job to go around scaring people, but as I said earlier on, there is a close connection between online privacy and security. I think sometimes where you're able to show the people that are posting to say, well, actually, it's really clear now, based on your posts, that every Thursday you take part in this social activity at this place and you leave from your home at this time. And we're able to identify where your home is because of the other information that you've left. I think sometimes that does help some people understand that there is a security aspect to it as well. But it's important to try to do it in a way that doesn't feel intimidating, or that we're sort of trying to scare people into changing their behavior, because we agree that expression is a good thing, and we agree there are lots of positive aspects to these social media platforms. I think there was a sort of well-known case a few years ago where I think Michael Dell, the founder of Dell, I may have got that right or wrong, I can't remember. He'd gone away on holiday, and he'd gone away on sort of a luxury holiday in the Caribbean with his family, and he'd spent quite a lot of money on a kind of high-end security detail. But the problem was his daughter was checking in everywhere online publicly, and so you could trace all of their movements throughout the Caribbean across the entire holiday, which somewhat reduced the effectiveness of the security detail. So it's not easy, but you've got to try to find the right tools in the conversation to get the message across.
So because of the technology, all this problem has been exaggerated more. Before, if the technology was not there, probably the managing the reputation would have been much more easier. In your experience since you have been working for so many years, what would be one example, Rachel, and one example, David, you would share? It was a far-fetched experience of a worst scenario and how you dealt with it. Can you share some experience in this area?
Yes, I can go first if that's okay, Rachel. Okay, so a far-fetched experience. So an example would be a family business that had been very private for many years. They have one main company, and it had always been understood that they were wealthy, and so they occasionally appeared on rich lists in this type of thing, but not high up rich lists, just further down, and so they hadn't drawn a huge amount of attention. By coincidence, they were involved in a piece of litigation, and during that litigation, their lawyers, who were running the dispute, made some disclosures in some court filings that were ultimately public documents that revealed information about the way the family held the primary business in a way that had never been made public before. And so the effect of this, sort of astonishingly, was that overnight, and then this information was in a court filing, it lay dormant for a long time. Somebody, a kind of Twitter investigator, picked it up and tweeted about it and said, hey, has anyone seen this court filing? It shows the family ownership structure in detail and all the rest of it. That then got the attention of Forbes. Forbes then reran their calculations to how rich they thought the family were, and all of a sudden their wealth went up tenfold overnight and catapulted them into the kind of higher echelons of the rich list. This then prompted a huge amount of interest, new interest in the family, and some of that interest was very positive, and some of it was more negative. And a negative example of interest was somebody decided to set up a scam where they were pretending to be one of the family members. And the scam was supposed to be about sort of investing money in charities. And they'd started, and this all came out later on, they started to kind of go online to lure people into this scam. One of the people they lured into the scam fell for it very, very much so. And the scammer began to kind of extend a dialogue with them. But the lady that they extended the dialogue with was slightly unbalanced. And she began to believe, although this was not true, that she had been offered a job at the family's company. And as time went on, not just that she'd been offered a job, but she actually started to believe that she had a nascent relationship with one of the family members, a romantic relationship which didn't exist. So these things happen, and to some extent, what was dangerous about this, and this goes back to the point about social media, is that because of the way that the family members were putting information on some social media accounts, even though they were private from a press media point of view, they weren't very private on social media. The individual was able to find out where the son lived and information about his children. So she then started messaging the general counsel of the company saying she was going to get on a plane. She was at the airport. She was going to get on a plane and come and see the son, which also created this huge anxiety about, is this a security risk? So the kind of really unusual and far-fetched outcome of the story was that one of our partners is an expert in kidnap cases. He's a kidnap hostage negotiator, and he's comes from an intelligence background. He's very, very adept at dealing with people. So he spent about 2 hours on the phone with this lady, persuading her that this was a subject of fantasy and there was no reality behind her wishes and interests. And she finally understood this to be the case, and he managed to persuade her not to get on a plane and come and try and find the family member. And so the immediate security risk was averted. But for me, the thing that made me smile was the very last thing she said on the call, on the conversation, was, well, if there is no job at the company, can I have a job at Shillings, please? To which the answer was, unfortunately, there are no positions currently available. But this is a very, it shows how a simple act can really dynamically change for a family their profile and the level of interest in them, and some of the unwanted attention that comes with this.
Rachel, your experience, any far-fetched experience, what you have dealt with?
So one, I was talking to David about it the other day, was it was a family business, but a few families were part of the same business in finance, and they were doing what we would all class as normal things. They were raising money. And so they were actually proactively thinking about reputation issues before going for fundraising, because they knew they'd come under scrutiny. And there were some blog sites making allegations about one of the founders, but most of us would have looked at those blog sites and said, oh, they're all rubbish. This is just people being difficult. But we knew that if they were going to raise proper money, that would become an issue. And they're all personal allegations. Anyway, we had to apply to court. We ended up in a situation where we were also, which is probably wouldn't happen nowadays, we ended up with a claim against Google to find out who was behind some of these websites. We had to go off to New York. We started in England. We had to go off to New York to try and track down where the person putting these websites was based from. And because it was in the days of dialing up on the internet, so you would find an IP address from someone's BT account or British Telecom or something fairly bland, because it still went through phone lines. We had to track all this down to try and find out who was the author behind the blogs. Eventually, we ended up in Arizona, some middle of nowhere sort of house it was tracked down to end up finding out that the allegations were made simply by someone's girlfriend, because the owner of the house of Arizona was the girlfriend's friend's grandma. So this poor grandma, her electronic equipment was being used to make these false allegations. But you almost, the reason it was weird and bizarre is, we started off with a proper lot of money finance company, and we had to track the allegations all the way to a house of some poor old grandma in the middle of nowhere, ended up in the middle of a claim about blogs that she probably had no idea how to access, or wouldn't have known if they'd hit her in the face. So it's weird, these situations we end up in. I said to David, we had a court case against Google, and I remember coming out of court and they'd offered us a deal. And I said to the client, look, you're extremely wealthy, I get that, and very successful, but we have to assume that Google are wealthier, and Google could fight this case forever and it would make no difference to their finances. And so, the deal we have on the table is a good one. They are bigger than any of us, however successful families might be.
That's very interesting. It's just a unique query I have, I'm just thinking of as I'm talking to you, there's a big ESG awareness going on in the world. And there is a fight against the carbon footprint, and there are a number of businesses which are not environment friendly in nature, or sometimes you are in some business which is it's not a socially, it's not a cool business where you are going to get a lot of valuation, but it's a difficult business to run, and families have been doing for a long time. But suddenly in the wave of this ESG, etc., there's a lot of backlash on those businesses. Particularly, it has nothing to do with the family, nothing to do with the promoters. They're all clean, doing a good, clean governance, good business. But just because they happen to be in some industry which has quote unquote some ESG issues, environment unfriendly issues, how does one deal with such allegations which come? You are polluting the environment or whatever. So how does one go about it? Do you have any experience dealing with such experiences?
It's a really complicated subject, and there is some. I think there is a risk occasionally of double standards in this conversation. I think double standards between countries, between entities in countries. One thing I would say, I think Rachel and I both experienced, is that there is an entirely legitimate and transparent green lobby. But if you become the center of a debate about clean energy or ESG issues, that you will find that you are under attack from a whole range of different pressure groups, entities, and all the rest of it. It's really important that you understand who they are and how they're funded. We've had examples where what appears to be a charity, a straightforward charity with a specific ESG ambition, is actually funded by a hedge fund manager who has an interest in seeing the company in question being damaged. So it's a very complicated landscape when it comes to ESG issues. And I think knowing and having the intelligence and the information to see how all the protagonists are aligned and funded is very important, because as Rachel and I are all in favor of freedom of expression and legitimate companies making, NGOs making their point. But what we're not happy about is when that's through subterfuge and there are other people with a sort of specific axe to grind.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct what you are just saying. But the idea here is that what we can do about it. And also I wanted to ask both of you, what is your advice and experience in the area of cyber attacks and data thefts and holding the family, ransomly holding them for, this is happening more and more. And what kind of an impact it has on the family business, and what should one do to prevent it? Because it can go beyond their control. Not everybody has I know many large family run businesses, they have a great data security department, still all that is broken like this in no time. Any of your thoughts in this area would be helpful.
Well,
David, you go.
I'll start and then you follow. So typically when people are thinking about defenses, they think about people, processes and technology, and having defense baked into each of those areas. In our experience, I think it's fair to say, Rachel, people is always the most important one. It's about the education that's required to know how to avoid a phishing attempt or an attempted hack in the first place. But it's also about people that are in your businesses. We see disgruntled ex-employees at the heart of many issues that we come across. And there was a study done a while ago that suggested that 6 out of 10 individuals that leave a company take some form of company data with them.
Right.
And not necessarily maliciously, but imagine if you had a dinner party and you invited 10 people to your house and you knew that 6 of them were going to take some of your possessions home with them. You would take a different take a different attitude to the whole thing, wouldn't you? So I think it's in our experience the focus is always best placed on people. Rachel, is that true, do you think?
Yes, I definitely, especially at the moment in lockdown or whatever the current state that we're in. I was talking to a client where they were saying, when we're in the office, of course, you can keep a certain amount of an eye on your employees just by being there, or people will talk to you and say, I've got this problem, but it's much harder when everyone's working remotely to get everyone to feel it's safe to call you, or that also the other side, there's a certain amount of people that have time on their hands and can sit at home fresh in the knowledge that no one is looking over their shoulder. So if they want to do things wrong and try and get data, they can do it more freely at home because no one's watching what they're taking photos of. So it's definitely the people. 99% of the time, it's the people rather than the hardware.
So that means one takeaway for me is that whenever you are letting go of people from your organization, just ensure that you are parting on good terms and you are still continuing to be good friends with each other. I think that's the biggest thought you are sharing with us.
Totally agree. And I think don't think about it too legally. It's very easy as a lawyer to say they're only due X 2 months, say, but if the reality is by giving them 3 months salary, they will feel good and they've worked with you for 10, 20 years and they deserve to feel good, then that could go a long way. I agree with you.
Okay, so one question, there are family conflicts which breaks out, and if you don't manage the conflicts well within the family, and when it starts to spill out, what kind of a damage it does to your reputation score when media picks it up, or you go out, or because this is very, very common, and the moment all this happens, your valuation starts taking place very, very fast. Any thoughts in this area?
There's a very public case at the moment in the UK where a prominent family, a very, very successful family with two brothers at the head of the family have fallen out, and it became public, and the family own a sort of a prestige hotel in central London, and it became public that one branch of the family were bugging the other branch of the family to understand what they were doing. They had installed listening devices in a certain part of the hotel, and that's been really, really damaging from a reputation point of view. And we've definitely seen other instances of sort of family family fallings out in public.
I think Dixit, my advice would be, without doing myself out of a job, is that family disputes would be far better dealt with someone like you around the table, or even with input from lawyers to try and resolve it between four walls in confidence, than going through the court process. I mean, everyone loves to read about, unfortunately, the world we live in, people like to read about other families and what's going on. So anything public is going to attract attention.
That's true. People love gossips of the other families. And, there are some questions which are coming in saying that, public has a short memory and they will forget, and life goes on. But in your experience, do you think that whatever the damage you have done once few years back, and once in between in between you keep doing some damage to yourself, do you think that this is forgotten by the various stakeholders, or does it pop up its own head when you are at a crucial junction?
I think in our experience, the general public or the people in your immediate environment have a relatively short memory. The number one thing, the game-changing thing in the last sort of 15 years is the cataloging of everything that happens to you online. And so no matter what you're going to do in 10 years' time, the public may have forgotten about it, your friends and family may have largely forgotten about it, but the online world and the counterparties, the bankers, the lawyers, the trustees, the auditors, whoever it is who are going to engage with you will have that information. So we think that's changed. That the dynamic has changed hugely in that regard.
I mean, I know you have worked with few Indian families, family business houses. Do you see anything different happening to Indian family business houses than any other part of the world? Are we any different?
There's a lot of similarities, and the drive and the kind of the will to succeed is phenomenal that David and I have had the privilege of witnessing. I think one difference perhaps is that India being such a large country, and there'd be these certain ways. So from what we can see, for example, if the Indian media publishes this company has tax investigations, most of the stakeholders in India will think, okay, so do every other company have tax investigations or other inquiries? That does not necessarily mean they're guilty of wrongdoing. But as soon as they come out of India and try to expand to different international countries, perhaps UK or USA, the whiff, unfortunately, of an allegation of there being an investigation may well stop funding or business deals. So it's a transition between what's normal in India and then coming to see what people might view as suspicious in a different country. It's the kind of coming to be international from the national organizations.
Right.
That's one.
No, certainly it's extremely interesting. And, you know, this is a very big topic, and probably doing this just within 1 hour is not doing big justice to this topic. But, you know, it has been extremely interesting the way both of you have shared your experiences with some anecdotes. I know it's very difficult because we all sign NDA and privacy. We are the confident of the privacy of our clients. Therefore, you could not share many names openly, which is very understandable. But, you know, what would be one last piece of advice you would give to all our audience today in terms of, before we conclude today's session, what would be one last piece of advice you will say? If we have to protect our reputation, just focus on this, what could be that? Something from you, Rachel, and something from you, David.
Okay, my one thing would be, I think, to realize that nowadays nothing is transient, unfortunately. So whatever we say, whatever we do is recorded somewhere and can come back to be used against us or families in a different context.
David?
There's a sort of, I think it's a saying really, but there's an idea that sort of 9 out of 10 drivers, drivers of cars, rate their driving ability as above average. This is statistically impossible. People have the same attitude towards reputation. They either think it won't happen to them, or they think if it does happen to them, they'll be better than the average at managing it. And all I would say is there's a lot of that's a classic human bias. So I would say, do get interested in it before somebody else does. That's really important.
Yeah, because the human mind our mind tries to tell us that this will never happen to me, it will happen to somebody else only. And we are always shielded, we are always protected. I always tell people that, the universe is watching you, God is watching you. So therefore it has been an extremely interesting conversation we had with all of you, and your insights were very practical and very helpful. I'm sure lots of people will reach out to you to ask for more guidance, more information. Thank you so much for taking out time to guide our audience today and share your rich experience. And I would like to thank Parampara Family Business Institute and Shri G.M. Raoji for your continued support to spread the awareness for the family business community from different topics. We have a very interesting topic which is planned next Saturday. Dr. Ross is going to share us in terms of how we are going the family businesses and the challenges with different types of addiction it impacts the family business. So I'm sure many people will benefit greatly from that conversation. And my biggest takeaway is that don't take reputation lightly. You have to ensure that it is very invisible factor, and you need to put in enough effort and be completely conscious about how you are going to address the reputation as a subject for yourself, for your family and your family business. This has been very interesting. Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you so much, David. Thank you, Shri Jim Raoji. Namaste. Shubharatri to all of you.